I'm on camera, although I guess you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. All right, so I am, oh, there's Kathy, yay. And I did see Catherine, okay. So I'm going to try to share my slides. I just have a few slides here. I was actually going to try to do a poll to start, but I don't think I have the authorization to do it, but maybe just a show of hands in the, the people part or in the chat. Let me know if you do training. Have you done training at all in seasonal adjustment or maybe R or Python? Yep, Brian has a course, Kathy, because you guys are here, Catherine. I'll raise my hand, not seasonal adjustment, but in other things. Great, Bill Bell, yep, good. Okay, perfect. Well, hopefully some of you who aren't on the panel, but you've done training, you will chime in and participate. And actually, we hope everybody's going to participate if you have something to contribute, because this is meant to be a discussion, not just, I mean, we want to hear from our panelists, but we also want to have a dialogue with those of you who are here. So let me share my PowerPoint. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work with hands being raised, but we'll see how it goes. All right, so welcome to the Trading and Seasonal Adjustment panel. And I'm happy to be here as the moderator. And these are our lovely panelists. We have Kathy McDonald-Johnson. I'm sure you've heard, you've gotten lots of emails from her as one of the primary organizers of this workshop, as also Brian Monsell has put a lot of work into it, and Harvill Hood. And I think the three of you and others too have been involved with the workshop from the very beginning. And I don't know, Kathy, how many years has this been for the, is this like the fourth or fifth one?
I think this is our fifth one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think we started in 2016. Is my recollection.
Yeah, and I think we were in person at BLS.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we were.
Yeah.
Yep. So still going strong, thanks to some great leaders that we see here. So I asked the panelists to send me their bios, but I was going to have each person tell us briefly about their experience and what they teach in terms of seasonal adjustment. So we have sort of a baseline to go on. And I thought at the same time, each panelist could just also introduce themselves. So I'm going to stop sharing. And let's start with Kathy. We'll just go left to right. So Kathy, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about your seasonal adjustment training.
I almost didn't unmute myself, which is a joke because I mean, almost every time I start talking while I'm still muted. So I'm Kathy McDonald-Johnson from the Census Bureau, and it's fun for me to be in this discussion with Brian because he taught my first class that I took in seasonal adjustment, and with Catherine because she essentially trained me in how to provide seasonal adjustment training. And I really have to give credit to Demetra Letris because she's the one who is continually updating and improving our course materials for our staff. The primary training that our staff provides is a technical class in how to review time series and choose appropriate seasonal adjustment settings. It's a 4-day or 5-day course with a mix of lectures and in-class computer worksheets. It's highly technical, but it's certainly not on the level of a college course. Over the years, we have sometimes provided a less technical course that focuses more just on concepts and not as much hands-on. And we are working with some analysts now to put together some new materials. But this technical class that we do, that has been our primary focus. Before the pandemic, even though many of our colleagues already were teleworking, when we would give a class, it would have to be in the computer classrooms, and they did not allow anyone to connect remotely. So everyone had to take the class in person and attend all days to get the credit for it. So even back then, we wanted to have some recorded materials or materials that people could go through on their own. Because in every class that we gave, there would be someone who would have to miss some part of it because of a big meeting or because of just work schedules or something. And we would just say, well, please review these slides when you have time. This is what you're going to miss. But since the pandemic, we did teach one live remote class where everyone was virtual. But after that experience, we decided that we really needed to have some kind of at your own pace where people could go through things. Demetra, I mentioned she's done all this work. She reworked our materials. She broke them into smaller segments, and then we recorded everything. Oh, and a big thank you to Jim Livesey because he recorded the section on seats, seasonal adjustment for that. And we've provided that at your own pace class officially twice, I think, in the coordinated system. And when we were doing that, we held office hours for anyone who wanted to ask questions or have further discussion. We noticed that most participants didn't bring questions, but they would just show up to see if anyone else had anything to talk about. So Demetra and I have talked about how to improve the office hours, but we haven't had the chance to test our new ideas for office hours. And as of now, we are starting the process of moving back into our office building. And it isn't clear right now whether the in-person classes will be back to that previous system where people have to be there in person all the time, or if we will have hybrid classes. I think we might have hybrid options coming up. So we'll have to see what comes of that. But I think we're still going to need this at your own pace pre-recorded materials. One nice consequence that of having those is that even though a class wasn't necessarily available, the official class wasn't necessarily available, we had those materials that we were able to provide to a couple of people who just needed to know more about seasonal adjustment. And I also see a benefit of having these materials out there that anyone who just wants a refresher can pop in and say, oh, what did it say about the regression parts again? I want to see those again. So in all, I've covered a lot of things like how things used to be and how they are now. And it's not essentially clear what the future holds, but I do think we'll have probably a chance for hybrid classes, but definitely I think these recorded materials are going to be needed well into the future.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I was before COVID was teaching different R classes. I actually was intro to R and then some other more specialized ones, but and I did move to completely virtual with it, in part because I wanted to give the field offices an opportunity to participate. So I think that's another reason maybe to have, or in organizations like BLS and Census to have these options other than completely in person. It'll be interesting to see how hybrid works. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to Catherine next. If you could introduce yourself and tell us about your training experience.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hood, and can you hear me okay?
Yep.
My very first experience with training, since Kathy was telling stories, I had been at Census Bureau maybe 3 or 4 months, and Kathy and Joe Huseman were taking a seasonal adjustment course, and I think maybe Brian was teaching it, but the next day was David Finley Day. And Joe convinced me I needed to come along with them to Dave Finley Day. And I had not been to the earlier days of the course. I was so completely lost. And I remember David was talking about spectrographs and like a car tire when it's filmed for a commercial. And I was so completely lost. And I knew my boss was going to want me to work on X11 because it was X11 days. I'm like, I was just, I don't belong here. I never should have come to David Finley Day. So that was my very first experience. And I missed all of Brian's days because I wasn't actually enrolled in that class, which is part of the problem, right? A new person comes in, but if the class is already full, then they have to wait for the next time around. So my experience now, I still get to travel some, but because I'm kind of retired, I only get to go to the places I want to go. So I have a class coming up next month in Mexico, and I'm teaching at Bank of Mexico. I'm teaching really kind of the usual technical full week class. Then the first time I went to Mexico, I went with Kathy, and and I only spoke Latin and not any Spanish, and I kept embarrassing Kathy. So yeah, good times, good times. My son Elijah works with me now. He was on the panel last time. Elijah's kind of my web guy, and we have a class available on the web. It's an intro to seasonal adjustment. It's not technical, and it's all recorded. You do it at your own pace. And we have been working on the more technical aspects where you're still in beta testing. I guess it's hybrid because what we're trying to do is once they have finished the do it at your own pace part, we're encouraging them to get their own series to send it to us too. And then for us to work together through Zoom or Teams on the series that they provide. So that we're still working the kinks out of that. And we're still in beta testing. Elijah and I are still working on some editing as things come up. We thought when COVID hit that we would have a lot of free time to finish up stuff. It didn't really work out that way. So I'm not exactly sure what he promised. I don't remember what he promised last when he was on the panel, but whatever he promised, we're probably behind. And yeah, that's pretty much my training experience. Still doing the same basic stuff. I mean, I guess we do some improvements too as we go along, but yeah, I don't know if it's changed a whole lot. The course I teach in Bank of Mexico is pretty much the same one I've always taught.
That's okay, though. I think we kind of establish a course and then maybe tweak it a little bit, but
yeah,
especially if it's introductory. That's really interesting about the course you have online that you're working on. And I don't know if you're able to do it, but maybe you could put a link, or maybe Kathy could, if it's easier for you to get to it, but a link to your website. That would be of interest. But also you mentioned something that that maybe well, I'm interested in hearing your answer and yours, and maybe the whole panel too, is because you mentioned the course would get full. And of course, if it's in person, then the number of students you can have in the class depends on the classroom and the setup that you have. But if it's online or hybrid, then we don't really have that constraint necessarily. So what do you think is the ideal or range of students that you can handle in a class, whether it's just in person or hybrid or virtual?
I think in the beta testing, probably the most we've ever had going at once was just 5 people, and everybody's going at their own pace. So when it comes time to just work in one-on-one, it hasn't really been an issue. I suppose if like 30 people wanted to sign up all at once, we might have some issues. Just if everybody wanted that, the personalized piece that's at the end, we might have trouble scheduling. But that's kind of hard for me to picture right now.
Yeah, how about you, Kathy, in like the intro class that you?
For at your own pace, folks, I think we've only done that. Well, the official one where, people got credit and it was under the coordination. We've done that, I think, twice. But like giving it out to just individuals who just need the information. I know we've done it a couple times since our last class, and I think we did it maybe a couple times before then also.
Yeah, when I did the intro to our class at BLS, I think we capped it at 20 or something, and that was in person.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both. Let's go to Brian. Maybe he could answer that question too when he introduces himself. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Monsell. I've been doing some form of seasonal adjustment training for about, I would say I've been in the field for like 40 years and maybe doing seasonal adjustment training for like 38 to 39 of them. Sometimes early on, I would just be the guy. I'd be the guy who comes in and shows you how to use the software, and started transitioning to teaching more of the technical stuff and other stuff. When I was BLS, I joined BLS in 2019 as a rehired annuitant, and one of the duties I had was to help with the training. And we did one like full before COVID. We did a full class of 3 or 4 days, everybody in attendance. We'd have, and as was alluded to, you're doing physical training, you're limited to the size of the room, and you're limited to if you're doing some kind of hands-on thing, you're limited to the number of terminals you have, or maybe your network capacity. Because you don't want to overload whatever. If you're doing a distributed environment, you don't want to overload the network. If you're doing an online course, theoretically that opens it up to more people, but again, you've got bandwidth issues and other things that can muck up things. This is why most of the people in this room right now have their cameras off and their microphones shut off, because you don't. If we had like 27, 30 people with their taking up the bandwidth, we would have issues. So when I was at BLS, like I said, before COVID, we would do classes in person. Every once in a while, there would be an international session where people would come from other countries, and I'd give a lecture on seasonal adjustment to a classroom full of people. And then COVID hit, and it became really apparent that we couldn't go on, and we didn't want to even try to do a virtual class with a large number of people. So the focus shifted to have something virtual on demand. So the way we decided to do it was, first of all, I started looking at how we could partition the different, reorganize the slides that we had, because, we would have one set of slides for like an hour and a half session. You don't want to do an hour and a half session with people online. You're going to lose people really quickly. So I went through, and we had different iterations of trying to break things up into digestible panels of no more than 30 minutes. So, you might have like, say, X11 part 1, where you just deal with the different filters, and then X11 part 2, where you deal with extreme value adjustments, and X11 part 3, where you're just dealing with the final adjustments and just running the actual software. And so I did the start of breaking things up into different things. And then once I physically broke up the files in different parts, We did a couple of other things. I would look over the material and see, is there a way that we can make this not just a block of text? Can I make this a little more dynamic or visually appealing? As a way of making it more palatable to people sitting in their houses on their computers. I also started developing texts for the different notes, pages, or text for the different presentations. And then we started to do, I started to narrate each of the individual PowerPoint files. So I would do narration of each of the different PowerPoint files and then record that narration with my professional microphone in my house, record those narrations and create narrated versions of each of the PowerPoint files. And then I would burn MP4s of those to create video files. And then we had like the old version of Microsoft Stream on our intranet, so we could upload all of the videos onto Microsoft Stream. Microsoft Stream develops, they develop narration, they transcripts of your narration. So then I would go through and correct all of the little mistakes in the narration, because every one of us have our little verbal tics, and Microsoft, it does an okay job, but doesn't do a great job of translating those things. And so once I would correct the transcripts and then load them into the videos so that the captions that were generated were correct. So not only you could provide people with transcripts of the different videos, you could correct the captions on the individual videos. And then my term and then you could picture that took up quite a lot of time. And so after my 3-year term as a hired annuitant was up, they tried, there was a process to hire me as a consultant, which I am now. I'm a consultant. And so Tom Evans and Morgan Haiti both created a Teams page for seasonal adjustment. We have a whole we have a team site for seasonal adjustment. And one of the panels in that team site is all of the recorded videos are available on Teams so that they could go and look at the videos. And I also developed quizzes for a pre-test and a post-test so that we could evaluate what the people's knowledge were before watching the videos, and then give them the same test after the video so we could try to evaluate how well they learned the actual material. So I developed all of that, linked them to the videos. That's up on the team site. So one thing that we did that's kind of unique was we decided to have curated sessions. And when I talk about a curated session, it's basically we play the video on Teams. I will introduce the video and talk about it, and then we actually run the video. I have another person who is looking at the chat, usually Tom Evans. He's watching the chat looking for questions. And then afterwards, there's a Q&A session for people who have questions about the material, and I'm there to sort of lead that Q&A session. And so we would do that twice a month, because I sent out a poll asking people, okay, if we do this thing, what works best with your production schedule? And some people do their production early in the month, and some people do their production later in the month. So we wound up having like a schedule of we do one session the second week on a Wednesday in the morning, and another session on Thursday in the afternoon, so that everybody would be able to attend the sessions. So we get a wider swath of people who could attend the sessions, and they could attend them twice if they wanted to, and some people did. So every month for about 1.5 years, I would host these sessions with these narrated videos. We had about 13 to 15 videos on different topics like modeling, seasonal adjustment, seats, X11, things like that. I did a seasonal primer that was more for like pretty much anybody to just talk a little bit about seasonality and why we do seasonal adjustment. I also developed a special like two-day seminar series on, how to actually run the program, just do all the difference, took the specs in detail and just went over, in mind-numbing detail how to, what the different options were for different specs and like that. So, so that's pretty much what we're doing, what we did now. We're almost at the end, because I have a makeup session for seats next week that I'm going to do. I think Tom is doing some sessions on the history of seasonal adjustment. I don't know when that will be ready. And so after this, I mean, we haven't moved into Suitland yet. All of BLS is moving into the Suitland Federal Center. So, you know, we'll probably be asked to do hybrid sessions, you know, in person and virtual, you know, but we will still have the stuff online. And so there's a question of, what are the resources are going to be? We knew what the resources were available to us when we were at the Postal Center in downtown DC. We're not quite clear what the resources are going to be available to us when we go to Suitland. You know, how many training rooms are there? What's the process for getting them? How far in advance do we have to reserve them? Because we're not really going to be doing training like on a regular basis. We'll be doing training irregularly as hiring is done. So, so it's the question, there are questions of what software is going to be available to us. What setup is there going to be? Are we going to have like a room full of computers that we can actually have people run stuff on? And, is there some place for collaboration with census folks? I mean, because, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just ignore the fact that, census has a pretty far advanced program in terms of training. So why wouldn't we try to take advantage of that or try and do some joint sessions? So that's why we're not really that far along in looking at planning on hybrid, but I tend to do a lot of thinking about these things. So, because it's kind of my job, it's written into my contract. So
that's really interesting. I didn't think about the sharing maybe of the training facilities. So yeah, I don't know how that's going to work, if it's going to happen, or.
Yeah, I don't know whether BLS is going to have its own conference center or whether there are going to be different conference centers or training centers for the different agencies, or are we going to share that? And how are we going to share that? I mean, it's all, right now we're just basically working on, okay, are the people, do we have to come back? Or, we're I think that's where people are at, is where do we really have to come into the office 5 times a week? Do we really have to? 5 times a pay period or something? I think that's right now the focus of most people's attention. I'm not sure we're not really focused on, okay, now that we're here, how do we manage this? So
yeah,
but as I said, it's my job to think about these things. So
no, and it's good and it is good to think ahead, because it's better to sort of plan instead of like replanning, and then you have to switch everything and redo stuff. But so that's really interesting about the curated sessions. So those no need to answer now because I don't want to put you on the spot, but are those would you ever be able to post those recordings, say, to the YouTube channel?
I mean, we didn't record those sessions. We have the recordings. We have the recordings that.
Well, I guess that's what I meant, like the recordings that you play.
I would have to. That's not my. Let's just say that's not my pay grade. I mean, I was made pretty clear this when we started this, that no, you're not putting those on YouTube. So there may be a change of heart or a change of position, because there was an interest in like sharing them with certain people who asked about seasonal adjustment training, but I think that putting them up on YouTube was not, like at the start, wasn't something that was on my, like I said, it's not my purview. I think if we were going to do that, we'd probably have to redo them, and I'll talk about a little bit about that later. We'd probably, that was the first round. I thought we did a very good job, but I'll talk a little later about, just to let the conversation continue. But I'll talk a little later why I think that, maybe we might have to, that this is an evolving process.
Yeah, I can see why you'd have to maybe do something that with that in mind, that it would be public, because especially if it's like done by the government. Okay, so we have actually we only have about 7 minutes left. No, but it's actually a really fantastic conversation. Oh, go ahead,
Can I
Catherine.
say? Yeah. One of the things I remember Elijah asked me when he was little is why they didn't do seasonal adjustment in South America. And I said, no, they do it there too. He's like, yeah, but y'all never go to South America. And I mean, he was talking about Uncle Brian too. Um, and so when he and I started thinking about these courses, we wanted something that would be low bandwidth so that no matter where you lived, you could still do the course. So our courses are just JPEGs and MP3s that are linked together on the website. And we read from a script, and I didn't always stick to this script, but we took the script and use it as caption. So it's close enough and it's good English. Because yeah, if you get it to automatically caption, you get weird stuff, as we all know.
Yeah.
So that
Like,
that was
like I said, it's
it
good
was
to
a
have a
consideration when we were planning, was to make it low bandwidth for people that don't have good internet.
yeah, it's good to be able to download to like get out the transcript and then, you know, see the errors, correct them, and then upload them back. That's so.
Yeah, and I
Well,
guess
and
there's. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Kathy.
I'll try to be brief. But we were asked to make the narrations available just for accessibility, usability reasons. So yes, it's we try to make sure that the words match what we're saying in the class. But I mean that was a big thing too. And when we were trying to make things accessible, I was getting a lot of information from Brian and not as much information from the coordinators, although they were telling us that the materials did need to be accessible. So that was an extra wrinkle that sometimes is an afterthought, but I mean, it is certainly important when it comes to putting materials together.
And sometimes those standards change. They are in flux. When we first started doing the recordings, the standards were like this, and then the Department of Labor released a whole thing of you have to do it this way, this way, this way, and this way, and then which is why I think at some point we have to change it. We have to go back and look at what the standard. You have to look at what the standards are at a particular point when you want to change things, and then make sure that things are, you're following the current standards. I mean, you'll notice my slides. I have to change I changed the fonts and the orientation of a bunch of my slides from what was the Microsoft standard to the standard that now exists for accessibility. So, and another thing about doing virtual classes and things like that is, again, software changes, and it's sometimes hard. You make a video that's perfectly reasonable if you put it up on YouTube, and then you play it on the new version of Teams, and you can barely hear it. I found out more about the composition of PowerPoint files than I ever wanted to know, because I had to boost the volume of the narration on my YouTube slide, my slides. And that PowerPoint files are simply zip files. They are compressed files, and they have all of the, like the panels, and they have they have a basically a very, I have like an M4A files. So I had to use Audacity with a special utility within Audacity and increase the volume on every single slide individually. When you do this stuff, you learn things you never ever think you're going to learn.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You don't think about these things, and then you experience them, and then you have to learn all about the technology and so on. Hey, so we only have 2 minutes left, but there's been a fantastic discussion going on in the chat, so thank you for that. And does anybody in the audience want to come off mute and ask a question? No. Okay. All right. They've been having the discussion. Oh, Bill, good. I was hoping you would chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering, following up on what the three of you are saying, and can you hear me? Okay, good, because before I was off mute and couldn't be heard in the previous session. But anyway, I'm wondering where you think training format is and is going in terms of using pre-recorded materials, live training, virtual. Is there something that would seem to be a preferred approach, do you think?
Brian, you want to go first?
I'll go first. I mean, a preferred approach versus, I think the reality of how we work nowadays, lends itself to a hybrid approach. I think the software could be better for doing that. I mean, better bandwidth. Sometimes I load a video into Teams and 2 minutes later I'm kicked out and I have to go back in. So especially in the realm of interactivity, it would be great to be able to, like give a quiz to people in person and then have that quiz pop up for the people online and have it populate at my desk. I mean, I think that, we need to be thinking about how to incorporate more visually interesting and dynamic content within our training. Because, the people at home, I mean, this thing here, this little computer that we all have in our hands, I mean, it's, I know that I'm sure that, when I'm playing some video, I'm sure there are like 3 or 4 people on their phone trying to make lunch, like trying to make dinner reservations, so you really have to compete. You have to compete with that little tiny computer that's in your pocket or in everybody's pockets, for attention and to have them focus. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, Bill, but
our courses are online. The quizzes are online. They get immediate feedback from their quizzes. It's actually pretty slick looking because I had a friend help me program it. And my customers, when they're done, they tell me one of their favorite parts of the course is the quizzes. They test themselves and they get real feedback. And I like it because they're doing it all on their own. And they're perfectly welcome to email me or call me. And we have office hours set up too, but they really don't. So I really like the idea of online quizzes. And I think with the exception of us doing this one-on-one thing at the end of our big course, I don't think we ever really plan on doing anything hybrid. And again, when someone reaches out to me to teach a course, a lot of times they would rather have me come in person, just because of technology issues with things like Zoom and Teams. So I'm not really planning on going in that direction myself.
Thank you, Catherine. I think, yeah, you're kind of in a different situation, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense for your approach. Yeah. Kathy, why don't you close us out?
Okay. I do think just because so many, we're taking training in hybrid environments now, because we're going to be back in the office, and teleworking is such a more pervasive situation for everybody at the Census Bureau, and I assume at BLS as well. So I think hybrid will be a thing that we'll be dealing with. I mean, one of my favorite things in our in-person classes is when people are doing the hands-on exercises and you kind of walk around the room and talk to them. I think I feel a lot of what Brian said. There has to be this visual, there has to be this interaction. You somehow have to build some rapport or something. And that is really hard to do. And I know that the materials we put together, a lot of them are just audio narration. And so you even lose the body language that you might have in trying to get a point across to someone. And I don't know. I'd really hope that we can kind of build from where we are and make improvements as we go along. I feel like, you know, each time we give a class, we learn something. And so I'm hoping that we can kind of just keep building and make things better.
Very,
I
very
don't know
good
if that
point.
exactly addressed Bill's question, but I mean, part of it's unknown, and but you know, as you know, as we keep learning, we got to keep improving.
Yeah, because as was pointed out, the technology is always changing too, and so yeah, we could adjust as things move forward. All right, did that answer your question, Bill?
Yes, I think there are different aspects to this, obviously, and different situations.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We went over just a little bit, but that's okay. It was a great, great discussion. I got some really good ideas from from the panelists, and I hope, and the discussion too. Some great, great resources in the chat. So thank you. All right, Kathy, did you want to say anything to close out the whole workshop?
Just my heartfelt thanks to everyone who participated, and you know, we have some great sponsors in GSS, B&E, WSS, and NIS. We you know, we couldn't have put this all together without them, but you know, we couldn't have put it all together without everyone who has attended, and especially those who presented. It's I don't know, it's been a wonderful workshop in my opinion. So thank you to everyone.
Well, thank you, Kathy. There's one quick question about the slides. Should people send their PowerPoint slides? Or maybe you'll send out an email to everybody?
Yes, if you have not already sent your PowerPoint slides, yes, please do send them. And we will be posting those on the GSS website. They have already said yes, that they will host those again.
And will we be able to post the recordings to our YouTube channel?
That is my hope for sure.
Yay. Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you very much, panelists, and also thank you to the organizers for another fantastic workshop. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
you know,
Demetrios.
I know that it may be too late, but just I remembered, if my G7 approves to share the SharePoint link of the training material, should I send to the email of the conference if other people are interested?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Kathy, I was answering for you. I'm a big advocate for sharing. So, hey, Mikhail. Oh, I think you muted yourself instead of unmuted.
I put it mistakenly. I wanted to apply them.
Oh, okay.
I still not very familiar with it.
All right. Well, it was good to see you, Mikhail, although you weren't on camera, but all right. Well, thanks everybody, and we will call it quits for another good year. Bye.
So thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. It was a great conference. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
And I will send you a new recording.
Okay, thanks. That would be great.
Yeah.
So how do you feel,